I'm here today to talk about the Rose Cardigan by Drea Renee Knits. Andrea Mowry is the designer, and I modified it slightly. I stuck to the pattern except for the amount of color for each one. I did mine in 2 colors instead of, I think it's 5 or 4. So again, I am Gabie. This is Gabie's Knit Goodies podcast, and I am Gabie's Goodies on Instagram and Ravelry and on loveknitting.com as well. So today is going to be all about Rose Cardigan by Andrea Mowry, and hopefully I'll give you lots of details that are helpful to you. So to start off, here is the picture from her pattern, and it's just called Rose. So it's a fingering weight, I believe it's fingering weight. I used fingering weight yarn, and it's an open front cardigan without any buttons on it, and it's knit a little uniquely. I'll start with saying my yarn. Let's see. I got my yarn from a fiber festival a couple of years ago, and it is Vivacious 4-ply by Fiber Spates. It's 100% superwash merino, and it is 399 yards per 100 grams. This is the color Blush in 623. That would be the lighter one, Blush. Let's see if this is the darker one. Yes, and then the darker one is color Grape. So this one's Grape in 620. So, fiberspates.com. So that's the yarn I used, and I knit the extra small, and I used the recommended needles that the pattern called for, which were, now I can't remember, needles. The main needle was a 4, and the ribbing needles are a 2. So I did use the 2 and the 4 knitting needles for this. US 2 and 4. So it was what was called for. And I think I pretty much met gauge. I knit the extra small because I knew I'd be a little bit potentially short on yarn, because I had 3 skeins of the Blush and 1 skein of the purple, of the grape color. And actually my cuffs are knit out of some leftover Sweet Georgia yarn, but it almost matches identically. It's not quite as variegated as the Fiber Spates yarn, but it totally worked, and it meant that I could really use up all of that grape for the sleeves and not worry about the cuffs. So what I would say if you're thinking about knitting this is definitely read the pattern through before you start, and don't get intimidated, because it is a little unique in the way it's knit, and so I couldn't just like pick it up and go. I really had to read it first, and then once I understood it, then knitting it was not a big deal. So you knit it first in 4 pieces, and you start here So you don't start all the way at the end of your cuff. You actually start here, and it's knit flat and then seam together. So if you despise seaming, I wouldn't recommend this. But it does add structure and all that good stuff. So anyways, you start here and you knit this way. And this is reverse stockinette. So this is the purl side, and that's your outside. And you're knitting half of this cable as you go. And then you do the same thing for the other side, knitting the other half of the cable, and then this right here is actually your seam up the middle. And as you go, you start with that short amount of stitches, and you increase here next to the cable, and you increase down here. And she gives you an Excel sheet to follow, which you almost is a must, because increasing up here is like every four rows, but down here it could be every 8 rows, and then you increase a whole bunch, so it fluctuates a bit. So you really need to keep track. And for me, even though I've been knitting a long time, I really needed to check off each row. Otherwise, I got lost and didn't know if I had done all my increases or not. So here's one of the sheets she gives you. I think you only need 2 sheets, like one for the front and one for the back panels. And I literally just crossed it off as I went. This is a clean one that I accidentally printed out. But that helped a tremendous amount. And I would say it's absolutely necessary. I guess if you are using your stitch counter or your row counter, that you could do it that way, but I found that actually checking it off was easier, because sometimes you do 1 increase, sometimes you're doing 2 increases on a row, and then there are others where you actually do like 3 increases on a row, or a cable and 2 increases, or things like that. So highly recommend using that. So again, construction, start here, increase, knitting half of that cable all the way up to this point. And you increase here to kind of make it, the front get bigger as you go down towards your waist, so that it's has an angle here. Let me go back to my yarn just for a moment. Like I said, I didn't follow her yarn guides in terms of switching colors because I only had 2 colors, and her sheet, it's color coordinated so you can tell when to switch. Because I only had 2 yarns, 1 skein of the darker one and 3 of the lighter one, I had to figure out where I needed to switch because I wanted to utilize as much of that purple as possible. And I kind of I really had to estimate it because it's knit in 4 pieces. So I could have split my yarn into 4 chunks to do it. Or for me, what I did was I took my yardage, which was about 400 yards of my purple, and I estimated where I would need to change the color based on hers. And I think it calls for 4 different colors, and I think my purple color was, the amount was between color A and color A and B combined. And so I estimated where I would need to change my yarn. And I think it was somewhere around here. So I just drew a line, and then for each of the 4 panels, I changed my yarn at that spot, and it worked out. But it was a little bit of pre-thinking, I guess you could say, to figure out where that would need to change. So here you can obviously see where mine changed. And I like the way that turned out. I think it turned out pretty cute. So after you get your 4 panels done, the back stitches you put on hold until you get both backs together, or both backs knit, and then you do a 3 needle bind off. as you can see here, and it creates a seam up the back, or yeah, it creates a seam up the back, but this seam is a stretchy seam because it's a 3-needle bind off and not a traditional like mattress stitch. On the front, when you finish these front 2 pieces, you actually go ahead and bind off this edge. So you do the 3-needle bind off to do the 2 back pieces together, and then you also do the you mattress stitch it on actually the wrong side, so that you have this little I don't know what you call it, the lump of yarn up the middle of your cable, so it looks like it's just knit together as one cable. But this is actually a seam, kind of the reverse side of your seam that you would do. And I'll take it off so I can show you that. So at this stage, you will have knit 4 pieces. You would have seamed the arms, seamed the underarm with a mattress stitch on the right hand side, and 3-needle bind off the back. So this is the back side of your cable, and you actually do a mattress stitch here. So on this back side, it doesn't really look like there's any seam at all. But then when you flip it back over, you do have to be careful with that mattress stitch so that your cable looks good, because this is what actually shows. It's kind of the back of the seam. It turns out really nice, and I like the structure it adds, going from here so that the sleeves just don't grow. Let me show you again that back 3-needle bind off. So after you've done those 4 sections and seamed them all together, you pick up stitches all along the bottom edge. So all the way around, you pick up those stitches and you knit ribbing, and that's with your smaller needles. One issue I think people have with this is that because it's using those smaller needles, it can get tight and bunch a bit. I have only steam blocked mine, and it does bunch a little bit, but not a lot. If you have a problem with that, you can use a larger needle instead of going 2 sizes down for your ribbing. I think that if I wet block mine, it will sit flatter and not bunch so much, because it doesn't bunch a lot. It's just a little gather. So after you do all of that, you knit 2 long rectangles of just this cable collar. And you leave the stitches on waist until you're done. And then you seam it up the edge. Maybe I should put it on for this part. That was my dog snorting. So after you've knit the 2 of these, you seam it here all the way up. One part of that I found that was a little bit tricky is that getting the right number of stitches lining up correctly to make it smooth, because it ended up being a little bunchier here. Not a lot, it doesn't really bother me, but that I found a little bit tricky to get it flat. Again, if I wet block this, it might kind of smooth out a little bit. I'm a little worried about it stretching out because your stitches are actually this way on the body. Your rows, rather, are up and down this way because you are knitting it sideways. And then these are the regular way. These rows are. And so I'm a little concerned that if I wet block it, will this part grow, but not like this and the bottom grow in the same way? I don't know, it's probably fine. But it fits well now, so yeah. Anyways, so you seam it all the way up from the bottom here up to the back of the neck on both sides to make sure that your cable panel is long enough, and then you do a 3 needle bind off to bind off those panels together. I had one issue with that in that I don't know, the bind off seemed to be kind of bunchy and I don't know, stick out a little more than I expected, I guess you could say. It doesn't quite like lay as nicely as I would like it to. If I had to do it over again, I might bind off and do a mattress stitch instead of the 3 needle bind off, because it seemed to add bulk where I didn't necessarily want it. I might be able to show it better like this with it on. So as you can see, the neck sits a little odd. The neck doesn't quite sit flat. It's not a deal breaker or a big deal to me, especially if you have your hair down. You're not going to notice that at all. And it might just be me. So the last thing you do, well, one of the last two things you do, so this and the cuffs are the last two things. So you pick up stitches along this area, end of your sleeve, and you knit your cuff. I knit mine nice and long. Again, you use the smaller needles. Be careful not to do it too tight, but just whatever's comfortable for you. I was a little worried that it was a little bit too tight initially, but I think it's okay. So you can wear it like this, or fold it over. Depends on how cold it is. If I'm ready to be really cozy, I like it long and pull it down my hands. And if I'm doing things, then I can fold it over. So I like a really long cuff. So I think that's all the major points of it. I will take you guys maybe outside to show it off fully so that you can see what it looks like and how it drapes. Again, this is Rose Cardigan by Andrea Mowry, and I do really like it. It is, it's batwing, in case I didn't say that before. It's very cozy and comfy and kind of easy to throw on and just like, wrap over and be snug in. But because it's not a thick yarn, it's not overly hot. So I can throw it on and wear it, and it doesn't make me super hot, which is kind of nice. I really like the lightweight yarns for sweaters because it is just a little more wearable. I'm on the East Coast of the USA, so it's not super, super cold here. We have some cold months. We definitely have all 4 seasons, but I would get the most use out of a lighter weight sweater than the super thick ones. Like I said, I knit a size extra small, and I am a fairly petite, especially at the top. I wear a size small clothing. And yeah, I'm not very busty or anything like that. So an extra small definitely was probably the right size for me. If I had gone with the small, I think it just would have been huge, because here's my sleeve and my body is right here. So that is a lot of positive ease, which I like it. I like it with all that positive ease. But if you're looking for something more fitted, this is not your garment. And definitely, I think she mentions to go down a size if you're worried about it being, if you don't want it super oversized. So it kind of just depends on how you want to wear it. So anyways, I guess that's all I have to say, and I will take you guys outside and show you a better view of the cardigan. And please let me know if you have already knit it or if you're planning on knitting it. And if you're planning on knitting it and have other questions that I didn't address, please let me know down below. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.